There are Sunday mornings when all you want is coffee, a technical manuscript about drainage systems, and the sound of forest birds. But that morning, instead, I had a lady with glitter on her cheeks, wearing leopard print leggings, standing on my porch screaming at me with a voice like nails on rotted wood. "You don't get to sit here anymore!" Funny thing, I was pretty sure I was still on my own land. But don't worry, keep watching, I promise. The final comeback will make you tip your hat. Comment where you're watching from. I bet this story will shake up your entire Pinewood Valley too. Let me tell you how a 40-year-old infrastructure consultant, peacefully editing textbooks for college students, ended up in the fight of his life against a HOA president who had no idea what she was messing with. My name is Theodore Harrington, but everyone calls me Ted. 3 years ago, I lost my wife Emily to cancer, and since then, I've been living alone in this small wooden cabin that my great-grandfather built back in 1914. It's not much to look at from the outside: weathered cedar shingles that have turned silver gray with age, a wraparound porch with hand-carved railings my great-grandfather whittled during winter evenings, and windows that have witnessed over a century of Colorado seasons. The cabin sits on what I call the sweet spot of the property, elevated just enough to catch the morning sun, but sheltered by tall pines that keep it cool during summer afternoons. Emily and I spent the best years of our marriage sitting on that porch every morning, drinking coffee from matching mugs her mother had given us, and planning our retirement in this exact spot. We'd watch the seasons change, count deer at the salt lick my grandfather had established, and talk about the garden Emily wanted to expand along the southern wall of the cabin. The cabin sits right in the heart of Pinewood Valley, Colorado, surrounded by a small grove of pine trees that Emily used to say made it feel like we were living in a fairy tale. She wasn't wrong. There's something magical about waking up to sunlight filtering through pine branches, the smell of clean mountain air, and the sound of the creek that runs along the back edge of our property. 6 months ago, the Rosewood family bought the lot next door and built what can only be described as a mansion with a kidney-shaped swimming pool worth $800,000, complete with artificial waterfalls that run 24 hours a day and underwater LED lights that cycle through every color of the rainbow in a display that would make Las Vegas jealous. The construction alone took 4 months and required a parade of trucks that turned our quiet mountain road into something resembling a construction zone. I watched from my porch every morning as workers poured concrete, installed elaborate filtration systems, and built what seemed like enough decking to construct a small neighborhood. Vivian Rosewood, the self-appointed president of our homeowners association, had made it her personal mission to upgrade our neighborhood to what she called appropriate standards for discerning residents. Picture a 35-year-old woman who thinks wearing sequined crop tops in broad daylight is the height of sophistication, with press-on nails so long they click against everything she touches and could probably be registered as weapons in some states, and sunglasses so large they could double as satellite dishes, even when it's raining or when she's indoors. She drives a red Maserati that she parks at angles clearly designed to take up 2 spaces, and she has this habit of talking to service workers like they're particularly slow children. She didn't bother knocking that Sunday morning. She just marched right up my porch steps in stiletto heels that clicked against each wooden board like a metronome, and started barking orders like she was addressing her household staff. "Mr. Harrington," she declared, her voice carrying that particular tone people use when they think they're talking to someone beneath them, positioning herself so that her shadow fell across my manuscript. "This rustic cabin situation has got to go. It's completely destroying the aesthetic of our upscale community, and frankly, it's affecting all of our property values." She gestured broadly with one manicured hand toward my cabin, as if it were something offensive she'd discovered in her salad. I carefully set down my coffee cup, the one with the chip on the handle that Emily had refused to let me throw away because it was perfectly good, looked up from the manuscript I was editing about sustainable water management systems, and responded as politely as my mother had taught me. "Mrs. Rosewood, this cabin has been in my family for over a century. It holds irreplaceable sentimental value, and it's been maintained according to all county codes." She let out a laugh that sounded like breaking glass, her red talons tapping against my hand-hewn oak railing in a rhythm that seemed designed to irritate. "Mr. Harrington, I've learned that every problem has a price tag, even sentimental ones. I'll pay you triple the market value to pack up and move somewhere more appropriate for someone in your situation." When I politely but firmly declined with a gentle smile, the same one Emily always said could diffuse any situation, Vivian's demeanor shifted faster than Colorado weather in springtime. Those oversized sunglasses turned toward me like the twin barrels of a shotgun, and her voice dropped to a menacing whisper that made the hair on my neck stand up. Then, you're going to find out exactly how uncomfortable I can make life around here. This is a community for people who understand progress, Mr. Harrington, not for those who want to live in the past. The threat hung in the air between us like smoke from a campfire. I watched her red Maserati roar away in a cloud of gravel and exhaust that left a fine layer of dust on my freshly cleaned porch furniture. Slowly opened my leather-bound notebook, the same one Emily had given me for our 15th anniversary with my initials embossed in gold, and carefully wrote in pencil, "Day 1, she has no idea who she's messing with." I stood up, walked into the house through the screen door that still squeaked the way it had when Emily and I first moved in, opened the drawer of my walnut desk that had belonged to my father and had faded with time to a warm honey color, and pulled out a thick file with handwritten blue ink that read, "Property Deed Documents, Harrington Estate from 1914 to 2024. The file contained not just the original deed, but survey maps, tax records, and correspondence that told the story of 4 generations of Harringtons who had called this land home. Then I smiled for the first time in months. Not the polite smile I'd given Vivian, but the kind of smile Emily used to call my engineer face, the one that meant I'd figured out exactly how to solve a problem. Vivian wasted no time launching what could only be described as a systematic campaign of harassment designed to drive me from my home through sheer attrition. She began hosting pool parties that would make a rock concert seem quiet, with music blasting until 2 in the morning, from speakers that seemed designed for stadium use rather than backyard entertainment. The bass would vibrate through my cabin walls, rattling the windows and making sleep impossible. These weren't occasional gatherings. They happened 3 times a week, always with the maximum number of guests that could legally fit around that oversized pool. She hired a crew of landscapers to mow their lawn with gas-powered equipment at 6 a.m. sharp every Saturday and Sunday, right outside my bedroom window, using the loudest machines available. When the mowing was finished, they'd switch to leaf blowers, then hedge trimmers, creating a symphony of mechanical noise that would last for hours. Then came the complaints to the HOA board about the toxic smoke from my traditional wood-burning fireplace, despite the fact that I'd been using it safely for decades and it met all local regulations. But Vivian wasn't content with just noise harassment. She was after complete control of every aspect of our neighborhood life. In her role as self-appointed HOA president, she began issuing new regulations with the frequency of a machine gun. No personal items visible in front yards, all house paint colors subject to board approval with a committee she personally chaired, and all pets required to be registered with vaccination records according to her personally curated list of approved veterinarians. She established quiet hours that seemed suspiciously designed to interfere with my morning coffee routine on the porch, and created a neighborhood watch program that somehow always seemed to focus surveillance on my property. These weren't designed to improve the neighborhood, they were weapons aimed directly at me, crafted with surgical precision to make my daily life as difficult as possible. The woman had turned harassment into an art form, always staying just within the bounds of what was technically legal, while making it clear that my presence was unwelcome. Being an engineer by training, I documented everything with the precision of a scientific study that would hold up in court if necessary. I recorded exact times down to the minute when noise violations occurred, used a decibel meter app on my phone to track sound levels that consistently exceeded municipal ordinances, and photographed evidence from my cabin windows showing the deliberate nature of the harassment. Every respectful phone call I made to Vivian was met with an immediate hang-up the moment she recognized my voice, often followed by an increase in whatever activity I had called to complain about. When I tried to file formal complaints with the HOA board, Chairman Henderson, a portly man who happened to be Roderick's golf buddy and regular drinking companion, dismissed everything with practiced efficiency. He claimed Mrs. Rosewood was an important contributor and pillar of the Pinewood Valley community, whose family had invested significantly in improving property values for everyone. The message was crystal clear. I was on my own in this fight, with no allies in positions of authority and no recourse through official channels. Then came the morning I discovered that Vivian had hired professional painters to repair the fence between our properties. Except they had somehow managed to paint a corner of my cabin bright neon yellow that made the entire structure look like a giant sticky note. The color was so jarring it could probably be seen from space, and it clashed hideously with the natural cedar tones of the rest of the building. When I came outside to protest this obvious act of vandalism, Vivian was standing there directing the work, wearing her signature sequined crop top that sparkled blindingly in the sunlight. She casually waved her hand like she was dismissing a minor inconvenience. "Oops, so sorry about that, Mr. Harrington. I'll arrange compensation for you later." These things happen when you're trying to maintain property standards. Week after week passed, and that promise was never kept, despite multiple polite requests for her to follow through. Even worse, I realized that the expensive security cameras the Rosewood family had installed were now angled to monitor directly into my bedroom and living room windows, a complete violation of any reasonable expectation of privacy. The harassment began taking its toll on me in ways I hadn't anticipated, affecting both my physical and mental health. I found myself lying awake at night, ears straining for the next wave of noise, my body tense with anticipation of the next assault on my peace. My blood pressure rose, my appetite decreased, and I started avoiding the porch that had been my sanctuary for decades. During those long, dark hours when sleep wouldn't come, I would look at Emily's wedding photo on the nightstand and question everything about my situation. Maybe I was being unreasonable by staying in a place where I clearly wasn't wanted. Maybe Emily would want me to be happy somewhere else, somewhere peaceful, where I could spend my remaining years without constant conflict. But then I would remember her final words to me in the hospital, spoken with the clarity that sometimes comes at the end. "Ted, never let anyone push you away from where you belong. This land isn't just our home, it's part of our family's soul. Promise me you'll fight for it." I felt torn between my desperate desire for peace in what should have been my golden years and my responsibility to protect the sacred legacy my ancestors had left behind. Finally, after weeks of escalating harassment and sleepless nights, I made the decision to call Attorney Pemberton, the man who had helped me handle legal matters when Emily passed away 3 years earlier. As I dialed each number on my old rotary phone, the same phone Emily and I had used to call our children with news of graduations and grandchildren, I happened to glance out the window and saw something that made my engineering brain go on high alert. Vivian was standing at the western corner of her pool, gesticulating wildly with those ridiculous nails as she directed a crew of workers who were digging what appeared to be a large construction pit with heavy machinery. My pulse quickened as I realized they were digging precisely at the property boundary that only I knew the exact location of, thanks to years of working with original surveying maps that predated the computer age. Something big was about to happen, and I had a distinct feeling that Vivian Rosewood had just made her first major tactical mistake in this war she had declared on me. I drove my old Ford pickup truck to meet with Attorney Pemberton at his cluttered office in downtown Pinewood Valley, surrounded by towers of case files and law books with cracked spines arranged in no particular order. After years of keeping this information to myself, carrying the weight of family secrets, I finally decided to reveal the truth I'd been holding on to about the real ownership of this land. Through a series of flashbacks that came flooding back with painful clarity, I explained how my great-grandfather, Patrick Harrington, an Irish immigrant coal miner with an unshakable belief in the American dream, had purchased 30 acres at this location in 1914 with every penny of his life savings. The property he eventually bought included not just the area where my cabin stood, but the exact location where the Rosewood family's luxurious swimming pool now sat, like a concrete monument to excess. Patrick had chosen this particular plot because it included access to a natural spring and had the best view of the Continental Divide, features that made it more valuable than the surrounding parcels. He built the original cabin with his own hands, creating a home that would shelter 4 generations of Harringtons through wars, depressions, and all the changes that time could bring. However, a serious surveying error that occurred during the 1960s, when the county was updating its records to comply with new federal mapping standards, caused the boundary markers to be placed incorrectly compared to the original survey coordinates. The county surveyors, working from incomplete records and assumptions about where property lines should be, had placed the stakes several feet off from their actual legal positions. The official property records were never corrected by local authorities over the following decades, creating a situation where the recorded boundaries didn't match the legal descriptions in the original deeds. Vivian and her family had built their $1 million pool under the completely false assumption that they owned all of that land, relying on the county records that showed boundary lines several feet away from their actual legal positions. The harsh reality was that 40% of their expensive aquatic paradise sat entirely on property that legally belonged to me, protected by deeds that predated their purchase by over a century. The pool's main structure, the expensive filtration system, the decorative waterfalls, and even the poolside kitchen, all of it was trespassing on land that had belonged to the Harrington family since before Colorado was even a state. Pemberton, with his 30 years of experience in real estate law, conducted a thorough and systematic investigation that uncovered a web of serious legal violations the Rosewood family had committed. First, Rosewood Corporation had deliberately filed false information about the size and actual value of their property with local tax authorities to minimize their annual property tax obligation. Second, the complex pool construction had been completed without proper permits, particularly lacking authorization for their wastewater treatment and disposal system. Third, the entire project violated legal requirements for minimum setback distances from construction to property lines according to municipal building codes. Finally, and most seriously, the pool's foundation had been constructed without any soil contamination testing required by current environmental protection regulations. Each violation carried substantial penalties, but together they painted a picture of systematic disregard for the law by people who believed their wealth gave them permission to ignore inconvenient regulations. Somehow, Vivian discovered that I was conducting a secret investigation into her family's activities, and her reaction was explosive. She immediately hired professional security guards to stand at the main entrance of her estate, claiming she needed protection from harassment and threats from an unstable neighbor. These weren't just any security guards, they were ex-military personnel who wore tactical gear and carried themselves like they were protecting a head of state. But she didn't stop there in her campaign to intimidate me. Vivian ordered her landscaping crew to cut down several mature trees on her property, but she arranged the cutting so that heavy branches would conveniently fall and shatter the windows of my cabin. When I came outside to protest this obvious vandalism, the security team claimed they hadn't witnessed anything unusual or illegal happening. The psychological pressure was becoming unbearable, affecting every aspect of my daily life. I found myself jumping at unexpected sounds, constantly checking the locks on my doors, and avoiding my favorite spots around the property where I might be visible to the surveillance cameras. I could feel my resolve starting to crack under the constant stress and intimidation, and I began to wonder if Vivian's strategy of wearing me down through attrition might actually work. Feeling cornered, Vivian decided to escalate to full legal warfare by filing official complaints in local court against me, with multiple serious charges designed to paint me as a dangerous and unstable individual. The charges included intentional harassment, criminal trespassing despite the fact that I had never set foot on her property, and deliberately inflicting emotional distress on her family. At the same time, she launched a character assassination campaign throughout Pinewood Valley, spreading malicious rumors that portrayed me as a creepy old man who spied on young families and posed a potential threat to community safety. To solidify her position of dominance, she pressured the HOA board to pass completely unreasonable new regulations banning overnight guests, a rule specifically designed to target and isolate me from visits of my adult children. I felt like the entire world was turning against me, creating a terrifying sense of isolation and siege. During my darkest moments, usually in the early hours before dawn, I questioned everything about my actions and motivations. Am I really being unreasonable? Maybe Emily would want me to find happiness somewhere else instead of stubbornly clinging to the past. But every time I looked at that photo of Emily smiling brightly on the cabin porch she loved more than anywhere else in the world, my determination hardened again. I remembered her final meaningful words. "This isn't just about our lives, Ted. This land carries the story of your entire family, all the sacrifices they made, and all the dreams they built here. Promise me you'll protect it." The phone rang sharply in the quiet cabin one evening, cutting through my brooding thoughts. Pemberton was calling in, a voice so urgent and tense, it was completely unlike his usual calm demeanor. "Ted, I've just discovered something potentially explosive about Rosewood Corporation that could change everything about this case. If my suspicions prove correct, this is no longer just an ordinary civil property dispute. This could be a serious environmental crime with federal-level legal consequences. You need to meet with me first thing tomorrow morning and bring all the original property documents from your great-grandfather's time. We may have just found the ammunition we need to fight back." In the tense atmosphere of the law office that smelled of old papers and coffee, Pemberton revealed a shocking discovery that had cost him 3 nights of sleep. The Rosewood Pool's filtration and circulation system was directly discharging dangerous chemical waste from chlorine, bromine, and other cleaning chemicals into the area's natural groundwater system, which was the source of clean water for Pinewood Valley's entire municipal water system, serving nearly 2,000 households. I suddenly realized with horror that the small stream that flowed peacefully through the back of my property, where Emily used to sit reading books on summer afternoons, was part of this contaminated groundwater system. Independent water testing that Pemberton had secretly arranged showed chlorine and pool treatment chemical levels 10 times higher than EPA safety standards, enough to cause serious health problems with long-term exposure. Even more frightening, secretly obtained construction photos clearly showed multiple orange industrial waste containers with warning labels being deliberately buried under the pool's concrete foundation during construction. Casey, the young construction supervisor with a weary and guilt-ridden face, had made the courageous decision to secretly contact me through an encrypted message sent from an anonymous email address. During a private meeting at a little-known coffee shop on the outskirts of town, Casey revealed with shaking hands that Vivian had directly ordered his crew to bury at least 12 containers of toxic construction waste, including lead-based paint, organic solvents, and industrial cleaning chemicals, all buried under the pool area to avoid disposal costs that could have reached tens of thousands of dollars. Casey had secretly recorded the entire process with hidden cameras and recording equipment, creating an undeniable treasure trove of evidence. But he lived in constant fear of losing his livelihood and facing harsh legal retaliation from the Rosewood Corporation empire. Casey explained in a trembling voice. She told us this was just a temporary emergency measure because the official disposal process was delayed, but I knew those poison containers were still down there like ticking time bombs. Driven by my responsibility to the community and my concern for neighbors' health, I decided to risk trying to collect water samples from the natural stream that ran through the border area for additional testing. However, Rosewood's experienced and professionally trained security team caught me red-handed. As I was crouched by the stream bank with collection vials in my hands, they immediately restrained me with unnecessary force, while Vivian, alerted instantly via walkie-talkie, rushed to the scene with a face full of hatred and accused me of committing serious property trespass and attempting to sabotage her family's infrastructure. Vivian immediately called the local police, and although Officer Reynolds clearly felt reluctant and uncomfortable with the situation, strict legal procedures still required him to arrest me for trespassing. This was the first time in my 60 years of life that I had to spend a night in a jail cell. While I was detained and unable to defend my reputation, Vivian immediately deployed a sophisticated character assassination campaign with high-level calculation. She used footage from her security camera system, cleverly edited to remove context and create a misleading narrative, then posted it across all major social media platforms with an inflammatory caption. Disturbed and dangerous neighbor caught trying to poison our family's water supply. We're not safe in our own home. This viral video spread like wildfire through the local community with hashtags that gained significant traction. To ensure neighbors' support, Vivian also spent a large sum of money, sending luxury gift baskets containing expensive wine, Belgian chocolates, and imported cheese to every household in the neighborhood, accompanied by handwritten thank you cards expressing gratitude for their patience and support during difficult times. Alone in that cold jail cell with the heavy smell of disinfectant, I experienced the deepest night of doubt and despair in my entire life. I lay on a mattress, thin as paper, staring at cracks in the concrete ceiling and questioning every decision in my life. Maybe I really am just a stubborn old man, clinging to the past meaninglessly. Emily is gone, my children have successful careers in distant places, so who am I fighting for? Why can't I accept reality and find peace for my remaining years? Officer Reynolds, who had known me since I volunteered to teach children about traffic safety, quietly brought me a cup of hot coffee and said, reassuringly, "Mr. Harrington, sometimes good people have to endure the deepest darkness before the light of justice finally shines." The next morning, Pemberton appeared at the police station to bail me out with a strange expression on his face that was both grim and excited, his eyes sparkling with mysterious secrets. "Ted, I have good news and horrible news at the same time. The horrible news is that Vivian has hired Anderson and Associates, the most expensive law firm in all of Colorado, with a reputation for winning seemingly impossible cases. But the good news is that in her panic and arrogant recklessness, she just made the most catastrophic and irreversible mistake of her entire life. Starting tomorrow, Ted, we're not just fighting a battle, we're going to wage total war." In the private space of his law office, filled with old books stacked from floor to ceiling, Pemberton finally opened up and shared the painful personal story he had kept secret for 20 years. Back then, when he was still a young, enthusiastic, and idealistic junior associate attorney, Pemberton had worked for a small law firm representing a family construction company in a lawsuit against Rosewood Corporation. Vivian's father, a ruthless man without ethics, had used blatant bribery of city officials, systematic intimidation of witnesses, and even serious physical threats to completely destroy that construction company, while simultaneously ruining Pemberton's promising early legal career. His voice trembled as he recounted, "Ted, I had to watch good people get crushed just because they dared to stand up for what's right. I've been waiting 2 decades for this opportunity. Your case isn't just about property ownership. This is a fight against an organized system of corruption that has destroyed too many innocent lives." With years of experience and meticulous preparation accumulated over time, Pemberton began mobilizing an extensive network of former colleagues who now held key positions in the EPA, State Attorney's Office, IRS, and various federal regulatory agencies. This dream team included Sarah Martinez, an environmental lawyer specializing in groundwater contamination cases with an impressive track record of victories; Robert Chen, a forensic accountant with FBI background specializing in investigating corporate tax fraud; and David Thompson, a retired FBI agent with deep expertise in investigating organized corporate crime and money laundering. Their carefully orchestrated multi-front strategy included simultaneously launching multiple legal actions: a federal civil lawsuit regarding property rights with a demand for emergency injunction, criminal reports to the EPA about serious environmental crimes, IRS investigation into systematic tax fraud patterns, and referral to the FBI for potential RICO charges related to organized criminal enterprise. Feeling absolutely confident with overwhelming community support and drunk on power, Vivian decided to organize the ultimate event to cement her dominance: the Pinewood Valley Community Appreciation Pool Party Extravaganza, an unprecedented scale event with the explicit purpose of permanently and definitively turning the entire neighborhood against me. No expense was spared for this spectacle, featuring a live band covering Beatles and Queen hits, high-end catering service offering lobster and filet mignon, an open bar with premium spirits, and even a fireworks display scheduled for sunset. At the party's climax, before virtually the entire population of Pinewood Valley, Vivian stood by the sparkling poolside with microphone in hand and delivered a passionate speech about protecting our wonderful community from divisive and dangerous elements that threaten our harmony and shared prosperity. A crowd of nearly 300 people applauded enthusiastically, while I, with my heart pounding from loneliness, watched from the dark window of my cabin. Boosted by an overwhelming wave of community support and feeling absolutely invincible, Vivian decided to escalate her sabotage campaign to new heights of viciousness. She arranged emergency utility maintenance inspections that resulted in my electricity and water services being completely cut off under the guise of mandatory safety inspections requiring immediate action. Simultaneously, she orchestrated a situation where garbage trucks accidentally dumped all their refuse and toxic waste on my front yard, then immediately filed complaints with the health department about unsanitary and hazardous conditions, creating imminent danger to public health. Finally, as her ultimate gift, Vivian obtained a temporary restraining order from a judge connected to her family network, effectively banning me from coming within 150 feet of any part of Rosewood property. During that cold and unforgiving Colorado October night, with my cabin having no electricity, no heating, no water, I sat alone in absolute darkness, clutching Emily's photograph with hands shaking not from cold, but from despair. This was the absolute lowest point of my entire life. Emily, my love, I'm 60 years old, completely alone, and literally everyone thinks I'm crazy and dangerous. Perhaps peace, real peace, would come from just giving up this fight and accepting that the world has moved on without me. The loud and mocking laughter from the pool party, still in full swing outside, drifted across the cold air. But instead of further crushing my spirit, it suddenly triggered a powerful memory of Emily telling me in her hospital bed, "Ted, my darling, when someone tries to bully you into submission, you don't run away like a scared animal. You plant your feet firmly on the ground and stand tall and show them exactly who they're messing with." The dawn of that determining day broke cold and clear. Pemberton and his entire legal team launched a coordinated offensive on all fronts simultaneously. A federal lawsuit regarding property rights with a demand for immediate preliminary injunction was filed in U.S. District Court, A comprehensive EPA complaint about groundwater contamination with a request for emergency investigation and immediate enforcement action was submitted with full documentation. A detailed IRS referral about systematic tax fraud with mountains of supporting financial analysis was forwarded to the Criminal Investigation Division. Casey officially became a federal whistleblower under comprehensive protection of the Whistleblower Protection Act, providing literally hundreds of photographs, video recordings, and audio documentation of illegal waste disposal that would make any prosecutor salivate. Dawn broke over peaceful Pinewood Valley, but there was nothing peaceful about it today. An impressive convoy of EPA vehicles with hazmat symbols, county inspector trucks, fire department emergency vehicles, FBI sedans, and multiple police cars slowly converged on the Rosewood estate like a perfectly choreographed dance. Vivian emerged from the mansion's front door in a pink silk robe, with hair curlers still in, holding a cup of coffee, expecting perhaps news of my final defeat. Instead, she found her beloved pool area completely surrounded by federal agents dressed in full hazmat protection suits. Across the property line, I stood calmly on my porch, sipping coffee from Emily's favorite mug, with the first genuine smile I'd had in many months. My voice carried clearly across the morning air. "Good morning, Mrs. Rosewood. Beautiful day, isn't it? I believe these gentlemen would like to have a few words with you." Within just the first 2 hours of the official investigation, the EPA immediately established a temporary containment zone around the entire pool facility after detection equipment confirmed severe groundwater contamination with shocking levels exceeding federal safety standards by dangerous margins. I appeared calmly and dignifiedly with a complete portfolio of authenticated property documents spanning decades, conclusively proving my rightful ownership of the critical section of land. Vivian's shock and panic became absolutely evident when the EPA lead investigator, a professional woman with a clipboard and serious expression, explained with clinical precision, "Ma'am, our preliminary assessment indicates that approximately 40% of this pool facility constitutes unauthorized trespass on legally owned property of Mr. Harrington here, and illegal disposal of toxic waste beneath this structure represents serious violation of multiple federal environmental protection laws, carrying potential criminal penalties." Sarah Martinez, the forensic accountant with a reputation for methodical precision, revealed the shocking extent of Rosewood Corporation's financial deception. The company had systematically underreported construction costs and property values to minimize property tax obligations by margins amounting to nearly $200,000 in annual tax liability alone, spanning multiple years. The fraud investigation uncovered within just one morning a paper trail of falsified building permits obtained under deliberately misleading information about soil conditions, environmental impact assessments, and proximity to protected watershed areas. The municipal building inspector examined property records and promptly identified numerous serious code violations that were never properly addressed during the construction process, including improper foundation work, inadequate drainage systems, and completely non-compliant electrical installations near water features. Faced with mounting legal jeopardy and watching her empire crumble before her eyes, Vivian desperately attempted to negotiate a way out of the crisis. With hands shaking and voice cracking with desperation, she approached me directly. "Mr. Harrington, listen, please. I understand we have differences, but surely reasonable people can reach an accommodation. I'm willing to pay you 5 times, no, 7 times, the appraised value for your entire property. We can resolve all this privately, no courts, no publicity. Clean slate for everyone." When I politely but firmly declined with a gentle shake of my head, Vivian immediately shifted to intimidation tactics that had served her family well in the past. She privately hired teams of private investigators to conduct invasive surveillance on Pemberton and his family, threatening to completely destroy his legal career and expose personal scandals if he didn't immediately withdraw from the case. In a moment of desperation to save her own skin, Casey revealed information that changed everything anyone thought they knew about this situation. Meeting with investigators in a secured location with full legal immunity, he provided bombshell testimony. From the very beginning, Vivian had complete knowledge about the boundary dispute and potential legal complications. Her strategy was never accidental. It was a calculated plan based on her interpretation of adverse possession laws. Casey explained with documents to back up every word. She explicitly told the construction team that if the elderly neighbor didn't challenge the trespass within the specific legal time frame, the property would eventually become hers through continuous occupation under state adverse possession statutes. She showed us legal research and said, "The old man won't live forever, and when he's gone, this valuable land becomes ours legally and permanently." Surprisingly, instead of immediate satisfaction or sense of vindication, I experienced unexpected sadness watching Vivian's world disintegrate before everyone's eyes. Despite everything she had put me through, harassment, legal troubles, social isolation, financial strain, I recognized in her desperation the reflection of someone who had never learned healthy boundaries or genuine respect for other human beings. I realized with clarity that Emily would want me to be strong and protect what was rightfully mine, but also to remain a decent person who doesn't take pleasure in others' suffering regardless of circumstances. Speaking quietly to Pemberton, I said, "I want justice served and proper resolution to this mess, but I don't want unnecessary cruelty. Let's focus on making things right for the community rather than destroying lives just because we can." The investigation rapidly uncovered evidence that Vivian and Rosewood Corporation had engaged in a much broader pattern of illegal activities beyond just the property dispute. Financial forensics revealed attempted acquisition of my property through completely fraudulent quitclaim deeds featuring forged signatures, false liens filed against my property to create legal complications, and a systematic campaign of harassment designed to force a sale under duress. Additional evidence emerged showing Vivian had targeted multiple residents throughout Pinewood Valley who opposed various HOA regulations with similar patterns of intimidation and legal manipulation. Financial records revealed gross misappropriation of HOA funds for personal use, including luxury vehicle payments, expensive vacation trips, and designer home renovations, turning the case into a broader criminal investigation affecting the entire community's financial well-being. The federal district court judge issued a comprehensive temporary restraining order, requiring Vivian to immediately cease all activities related to the pool pending completion of the full investigation and legal proceedings, with contempt of court sanctions for any violations. However, just after midnight, I woke up to the unmistakable sound of heavy construction machinery coming from the direction of the Rosewood property, despite the court order explicitly forbidding any disturbance of the site. Peering through the darkness, I witnessed Vivian personally directing a team of workers in black clothing, removing large objects from the pool area under cover of darkness, including what appeared to be containers and possible evidence being loaded onto unmarked trucks. My heart pounded as I realized she was attempting to destroy evidence on a massive scale, and this could be her most desperate and potentially catastrophic gamble yet, that might turn the entire case into a federal crime scene. I didn't delay a single second, immediately grabbing my phone and calling the police emergency line and EPA 24-hour enforcement hotline after witnessing Vivian's pre-dawn criminal activity. Multiple law enforcement agencies responded with unprecedented speed, arriving in time to catch her red hand, directing an elaborate operation to pump concentrated toxic chemicals directly into the municipal storm drain system that feeds into. Environmental crime unit agents wearing full protective equipment photographed and documented every aspect of the scene while arresting not just Vivian, but also the contracted workers attempting to destroy physical evidence. Additional charges were immediately added, including federal obstruction of justice, deliberate destruction of evidence under federal jurisdiction, and criminal endangerment of public health through knowing contamination of public water supply serving thousands of residents. The United States District Court, after reviewing overwhelming evidence compiled over an intensive 3-month investigation, issued a comprehensive final judgment officially recognizing my legal ownership of the disputed land section beneath the pool, with the court noting clear and convincing evidence of defendant's intentional trespass. Vivian faced conviction on multiple serious felony charges: criminal trespass with aggravating circumstances, multiple counts of federal environmental crimes including illegal toxic waste disposal and contamination of public water supply, systematic tax evasion and fraud involving underreporting property values, attempted destruction of federal evidence during an ongoing investigation, and criminal endangerment of public health through deliberate chemical contamination. Total financial penalties reached a staggering $2.3 million, including cleanup costs estimated at over $1 million, federal fines, civil penalties, and restitution payments to affected residents. Roderick, claiming complete ignorance of his wife's criminal activities and providing documentary evidence of separation and non-involvement, successfully filed for immediate divorce, with the court granting expedited proceedings. The federal court mandated an extensive environmental remediation program, with Vivian bearing complete financial responsibility for every aspect of the cleanup operation. The pool had to be entirely dismantled, with contaminated soil excavated to a depth of at least 12 feet and professionally treated at a licensed hazardous waste facility. Vivian was banned permanently from any construction, development, or real estate activities in the entire county for 15 years, with additional restrictions preventing her from holding HOA leadership positions anywhere in the state. The court appointed an independent environmental monitoring committee with authority to oversee compliance with restoration requirements and assess ongoing water quality to ensure complete remediation of contamination. The broader investigation revealed the extent to which the entire community had been systematically manipulated and divided by Vivian's tactics, prompting sincere soul-searching among many residents. Neighbors approached me individually to offer heartfelt apologies with genuine remorse, acknowledging they had allowed themselves to be turned against a good man through a combination of expensive gifts, social pressure, and carefully constructed lies. HOA Chairman Henderson submitted his resignation in disgrace after disclosure revealed substantial consulting payments from Rosewood Corporation in exchange for favorable rulings and suppression of complaints against the family. The newly elected HOA leadership, committed to transparency and fairness, systematically eliminated most of the oppressive regulations enacted during Vivian's reign and established a genuinely democratic decision-making process respecting the rights and interests of all residents without favoritism. In a remarkable demonstration of character that reflected the best values Emily had tried to instill in me, I approached the court with an unexpected alternative proposal. Instead of simply ordering destruction of the pool complex, I suggested transformation of the contaminated site into a community environmental education center and memorial park. Using mandatory penalty payments from Vivian's conviction, the comprehensive project would include a children's playground built with safe materials, a network of nature trails with educational signage about watershed protection, teaching gardens demonstrating sustainable landscaping techniques, and a memorial garden honoring community members who had contributed to environmental protection efforts. I formally requested the facility be named Emily Harrington Memorial Environmental Education Center, to honor my late wife's passionate dedication to nature conservation and community engagement while providing lasting positive benefit from a tragic situation. 18 months later, during a gorgeous Colorado autumn day with aspen trees golden against blue sky, I sit comfortably on my restored cabin porch, watching dozens of children playing joyfully in the newly completed community park where the toxic pool once posed danger to our entire neighborhood. The sound of innocent laughter and excited voices learning about nature has replaced the previous noise pollution from parties and construction. Vivian relocated to a different state to rebuild her life far from the scandal, with early release from federal minimum security facility contingent on continuing environmental restoration payments. AC received a strong recommendation letter from me, helping him secure a leadership position with the Colorado Department of Environmental Protection, where his experience with illegal waste disposal proves invaluable in preventing future violations. Our community learned invaluable lessons about the importance of standing up to bullies, verifying facts before judging neighbors, and protecting precious environmental resources upon which everyone depends. As autumn colors paint Pinewood Valley in breathtaking brilliance, I continue my treasured morning coffee ritual on the cabin porch that Emily loved more than any place in the world. However, instead of enduring obnoxious pool parties and construction noise, I now enjoy a symphony of children's laughter mixed with birds singing in the restored natural habitat where wildlife has returned in abundance. Looking fondly at Emily's photograph still displayed prominently in my living room, I whisper with deep contentment, "We did it, sweetheart. We protected our home and created something genuinely beautiful from something initially destructive. Most importantly, we proved that standing up for what's right eventually makes a stronger, more caring community for everyone." Sometimes the greatest victory in life involves not defeating enemies, but rather transforming conflict into lasting community, healing, and environmental restoration, benefiting generations to come.
Appreciate you sticking with us at QA Stories. Hit that bell so you never miss a moment, because things only get crazier from here.